Right now, Singapore households collectively hold $3.1 trillion in net worth. 3.1 trillion. And here's the number nobody puts on the front page. The top 10% of households control a share of that pile so large it would make your jaw drop. Meanwhile, the bottom 60% of Singaporeans are splitting what's left. And that gap is not closing. It is widening every single year. But here's what actually surprised me when I dug into the data. The top 10% in Singapore is not a club full of private bankers and tech founders. The real numbers are more specific than that. And where you land in that ranking depends almost entirely on one thing, not how much you earn, how much you own, and whether you started owning it early enough. Today, we are going through the actual numbers. What it takes to be in the top 10% in Singapore in 2026, broken down by age. Because the target looks completely different at 25 versus at 45. And if you don't know the number you're aiming at, you have no idea whether you're on track or quietly falling behind. Let's go. Before we get into the age brackets, you need to understand one thing about wealth in Singapore that makes it completely different from almost every other country in the world. More than 70% of the average Singaporean household's net worth is locked inside two things: property and CPF. That's not cash, that's not shares, that's not something you can spend tomorrow. It's equity sitting inside your HDB flat and the retirement account you can't touch until you're 65. Which means the actual liquid wealth of most Singaporeans, the money that gives you real financial freedom, is a fraction of what the headline numbers suggest. You cannot eat your HDB flat, and that distinction matters enormously when we look at the top 10%. Because getting into that bracket in Singapore isn't just about having a high salary, it's about having owned the right assets for long enough and not having spent the equity. Let's start young. If you are in your early to mid-20s right now, the median net worth for someone your age in Singapore is somewhere between $50,000 and $80,000. That includes CPF, any savings, and whatever small assets you've built up since starting work. Most of that is CPF. The cash portion is usually quite thin. To crack the top 10% in your 20s, you are looking at a net worth of around $250,000 to $350,000. That sounds like an enormous number for a 23-year-old, and for most people, it is. The ones who get there are not all high earners. They are the ones who graduated, moved back home for 2 or 3 years, stacked every dollar they didn't spend into investments and CPF top-ups, and said no to every lifestyle upgrade their peers were making. Or they received a head start through family support. Both happen. The point isn't that you should have hit that number already. The point is understanding that the gap starts here. Small decisions at 22 compound into massive differences at 35. Now let's move to the bracket where things get serious, your 30s. The median household net worth in Singapore for someone in their 30s sits roughly between $200,000 and $350,000. A significant chunk of that is the CPF ordinary account balance that's been building since the first payslip, plus whatever property equity exists if they've bought a flat. But the top 10% in this age group, they are sitting at somewhere between $800,000 and $1.2 million in net worth. Think about how that gap forms. Two people, same age, same starting salary out of university. One bought a resale HDB flat in 2018 or 2019 for $500,000. That flat is now worth $750,000 or more. They've been building equity every month through their mortgage payments, their property has appreciated, and their CPF has been compounding at 4% guaranteed. Their net worth has been growing while they slept. The other person rented through their 30s, spent on the car, upgraded their lifestyle with every pay rise, and is sitting at 38 with $200,000 in savings and nothing else. Same income, completely different outcome. This is the decade where the wealth gap in Singapore becomes structural. Because Singapore's property market is the most reliable wealth-building engine this country has ever produced. The HDB resale index has grown roughly 6.7 times since 2003. People who got in, held, and didn't over-leverage are the ones sitting on the right side of that gap now. Into the 40s, the numbers escalate fast. The median net worth for a Singaporean household in this decade is somewhere around $600,000 to $800,000. If they own an HDB flat, most of that is property equity and CPF. Liquid assets are still relatively low for most people. The top 10% at this age are pushing past $2 million. And to be in the top 1% at age 40 in Singapore The estimate from financial analysts is approximately $4 million in net worth. 4 million at 40. That number sounds extreme until you work backwards and see how it's built. A private property bought in 2010 for 1.2 million, now worth 2.8 million. A CPF balance of 300,000 built through decades of contributions and top-ups. An investment portfolio of 400,000 in equities and REITs, accumulated through consistent monthly investing since the late 20s. And critically, no car, no lifestyle debt, no COE trap. The people at this level did not necessarily earn more than everyone else. Many of them simply made one or two property decisions at the right time, kept their costs low during the years everyone else was upgrading, and let compounding do the heavy lifting. Now we reach the peak wealth decade, 50 to 64. This is where Singapore's generational wealth story becomes most visible and most unfair to those who came later. The median household net worth in this bracket is somewhere around $1 million to $1.3 million. That sounds solid, but the top 10% are sitting above $3.5 million. Some estimates push toward $4.5 million and beyond. Here is why. The people who are 55 to 65 today bought their first HDB flats in the 1990s and early 2000s for $150,000 to $250,000. Those same flats are now selling for $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 in mature estates. Some are crossing $1 million. In Toa Payoh, 5-room flats are hitting $1.1 million at the median. In Bukit Merah, the same. They didn't time the market. They just bought when they could afford to, held it, and woke up 30 years later sitting on $500,000 in property equity they never planned for. Younger Singaporeans cannot replicate this. The entry price is completely different now. A resale 4-room HDB in a good location costs $670,000 on average in 2026. The math of building wealth through property still works, but the starting point requires far more capital, far more CPF, and far more patience than it did for the generation ahead of you. And here is the number that puts the whole picture together. The top 10% of all Singapore households hold an average net worth of somewhere between $3.5 and $5 million, depending on the source and methodology. The top 20% average $5.26 million. Meanwhile, the bottom 20% of households average just $293,000. That is not a gap. That is a different financial universe. But here's the thing that matters most, and the reason this video exists. Singapore's wealth Gini coefficient is 0.55. That sounds technical. What it means in plain language is that wealth in this country is concentrated. More concentrated than income, and the gap is growing. But it is still lower than the United Kingdom, Japan, and Germany. Singapore's system, the CPF, the property structure, the forced savings, does more to prevent complete financial exclusion than most countries manage. The bottom 20% of households still hold positive net worth. That matters. Even at the bottom of the distribution, the system has given people an asset base to work from. The question is whether you are using the system or just surviving inside it. The people who make it into the top 10% in Singapore are not a mystery. The data shows a clear pattern across every age bracket. They bought property as early as they could afford to and did not over-upgrade. They maxed their CPF through voluntary top-ups and treated it as a guaranteed 4% investment, not as money that doesn't exist. They invested consistently outside CPF through REITs, ETFs, and equities, and they never stopped during market downturns. They kept lifestyle costs below their income growth at every stage, which in Singapore means they made a deliberate decision about the car, about the condo versus HDB, about the private school versus the neighborhood school. And the ones at the very top of that bracket did one thing that most people delay for decades. They started treating their net worth as a number they track, manage, and grow, not just a vague feeling about whether they're doing okay. The wealth is being built in Singapore right now. $3.1 trillion and growing. The question is whether you are on the side that is accumulating it, or the side watching it accumulate for someone else. Wherever you sit on that spectrum today, the most important thing you can do this week is calculate your actual net worth. Assets minus liabilities. Property equity plus CPF plus investments plus savings minus any outstanding loans. Write the number down. And then ask yourself honestly, is this number growing fast enough? Because the data is very clear. In Singapore, wealth is built through property held for the long term, through CPF compounded over decades, through consistent investment in income-producing assets, and through the discipline to protect what you build. The earlier you start, the less extreme the sacrifice has to be. If this video gave you a clearer picture of where you stand, hit the like button and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.